It's David Wowee, how are ya? Jade's Eidolons, is it actually worth pulling her more than once, or are you wasting your time? And how much damage does each one actually do? And there's one level that I'd highly recommend. I'll guide you through each Eidolon of hers, and then keep watching because the total damage for each might surprise you. By the way, if you have no idea how Eidolons work and what people mean when they say they have E0 Jade or an E5 Jade and so on, I've linked a super quick guide for you in my description. Check it out after this video. So let's start at Eidolon 1 called Altruism, nevertheless tradable. With E1, the follow-up attack damage from Jade's talent increases by 32%. After the character with Debt Collector state uses an attack and it hits 2 enemy targets, Jade additionally gains 1 charge, and here's where it gets better. If they hit 1 enemy target, Jade gets an additional 2 charges. If you were to get any of Jade's Eidolons on a low budget, this is the one you should get, as it completely opens up the amount of strategies you can do for her. As I hinted in my Litecoin guide, Jade is normally fantastic at pure fiction, as her kit rewards your team the more enemies you hit. Why is this? This is because of Jade's talent, which allows her to make an ally this thing called a debt collector. When the ally becomes a debt collector, their speed increases, and after they attack, Jade adds a quantum follow-up attack. But that's not all. More importantly, whenever the debt collector attacks an enemy, Jade gets a charge. So why are these charges important? When Jade reaches 8 charges, she will then inflict her own powerful quantum follow-up attack. So with Jade, the quicker you can get her to 8 charges, the more she'll do this strong follow-up attack, which is why they say an E0 Jade is great in pure fiction, because the debt collector is hopefully an AoE damage dealer like Herta, who attacks multiple enemies at once. Because the more characters they attack, the more charges Jade gets, and the quicker she'll get to those 8 charges needed for that strong follow-up attack. But E1 changes everything! Don't forget to like and subscribe, or if you're feeling generous, donate a thanks. Your little help goes a long way. This is because Jade won't need to rely on a debt collector having to hit multiple enemies. When Jade is on E1, when the debt collector hits just 1 enemy, Jade now gets an extra 2 charges, and when the debt collector hits 2 enemies, she gets an additional 1 charge. So now, Jade's charges will increase significantly faster, even if you're fighting against a smaller number of enemies. Would I recommend getting Jade to E1? If you were thinking of using her outside of pure fiction like Memories of Chaos, this would be super useful. Even if you're stuck to pure fiction, it would make things even easier for Jade. But if you were to test it, what would the actual damage difference Jade would do between E0 and E1? Like with my Firefly Eidolon guide, I've used Asagi's fantastic damage calculation simulator to see in a specific scenario what kind of damage Jade can do. As you can see here, I've got her with a recommended team build, and she has a signature light cone equipped. There are actually options here to increase the number of enemies in the team, and the damage numbers I'm about to report in this video would be so much higher if I used that option, but I kept things as they are just to keep things simple. What's probably more important for you is to see the damage growth with each Eidolon increase. I've pasted a link to my scenario in the description, and you can use that link to try it out after this video yourself. Anyway, at E0, in my specific scenario, my Jade dealt 2.113 million damage on her own. At E1, in this scenario, we have her dealing about 2.24 million damage, which is about a 134,000 damage difference, or a 6.34% damage increase, which doesn't sound like much on surface. But remember, E1 is more about Jade doing better on other modes besides pure fiction. And if you thought E1 was okay, let's check out Jade's other Eidolon levels. You might be surprised. Jade's E2, which is called Morality, Heron Authenticated, can actually be decent depending on how you set her up. At E2, when there are 15 stacks of pawned asset, Jade's crit rate increases by 18%. Why is this good? Jade's base kit lets her get some good crit damage via her stacks of pawned asset. The more pawned asset she has, the bigger her crit damage is. That's why in my Litecoin guide, I said when it comes to looking for Jade's Litecoins, it's better to build Jade's crit rate as her crit damage is already sorted. This is because she gets crit damage whenever she stacks pawned assets, and she stacks them very easily in battle. So you should be able to get the 15 stacks of pawned asset needed for that increase in crit rate very quickly. The higher crit rate you get from E2 also lowers your need to get Jade's signature light cone or other relics and items that you may want for the sole purpose of increasing your crit rate. But is this 18% crit rate increase good enough to impress your friends? Under my specific scenario, Jade's damage remains the same at about 2.247 million, so it's really not that much to show off to your mum about. But it's cooking. Jade's E3, called Honesty, soon mortgaged, is a standard trace-up Eidolon that increases your skill level by 2 to a max level of 15 and your talent by 2, also to a max level of 15. But this upgrade does give us a slight damage bump. We see an increase from the stagnant 2.247 million damage we saw on E2 to now we get a 2.43 million damage at E3. That's about a 180k damage difference, or a decent 8.14% damage increase. But we can definitely do better, right? We're nearing the top of the mountain, my friends, and by now you're either quite broke or still quite rich. But there's one thing we're certain about: there's no going back. I mean, if you've already reached E4, why even stop now? Jade's E4 is cleverly called Sincerity Put Option Only. What happens with E4 is that when Jade uses her ultimate, the damage Jade deals ignores 12% of enemy target's defense, lasting for 3 turns. This defense ignore could be useful against everyone, obviously, and makes Jade even more useful against enemies who aren't weak against Quantum. This Eidolon will be a winner if you're using this in pure fiction, as Jade will naturally end up activating her ultimates more often. But it is probably more useful if you've got Jade's signature light cone, yet hope is priceless, and or have one of her best relic sets equipped, such as Genius of Brilliant Stars, as they work hand in hand to shred defense. So what will Jade's damage be like at E4? It's actually a fair jump from 2.43 million at E3 to now 2.56 million damage at E4, which is about a 5.35% increase. But we're just getting started. We're now in the big leagues, baby. How about E5? Jade's E5 is called Hope, hitherto forfeited, and is another trace upgrade. Her ultimate can now increase by 2 up to a maximum of level 15, and her basic attack level can increase by 1 up to a maximum of level 10. Given that she will depend on both her ultimate and skill quite often, this could be quite a skill bump, but let's see the digits. We got her up from dealing 2.56 million at E4 to now 2.661 million at E5, so about a 100,000 damage bump, or a 3.9% increase. 3.9%? Is E5 even worth it? For the mental and most likely even financial toll this has taken on your life, not really. The only reason you're probably even toying with the idea of E5 is that you want to go all in with your life savings, or with daddy's credit card, and get to E6. E6, the final boss, the moment of truth. Jade's E6 is called Equity, pending sponsorship, and what happens with this is when there are debt collector allies on the field, Jade's Quantum Res Pen increases by 20% and Jade gains the debt collector state. Before I get into this Eidolon, for those of you who don't know, Res Pen is short for Resistance Penetration, meaning Jade can penetrate any resistances to Quantum. With this in mind, a few things are happening with this Eidolon. First, after you've made an ally a debt collector, Jade's attacks will automatically become stronger as she ignores resistances to Quantum by 20%. Not only that, Jade also becomes a debt collector, so now she can receive double the amount of charges, allowing her to generate at least 9 charges per turn. This increases her follow-up attacks and her crit damage, making her a force of nature. It's so good you might be finding yourself wiping pure fiction before one cycle even ends. But before you start selling your loved one's most precious things to afford this, what's the damage? You will not be disappointed, as Jade will jump from 2.661 million damage at E5 to a whopping 4.165 million damage at E6, which is about a 57% increase in damage, a huge increase from where we first started. So knowing all of this, which Eidolon should you get? I'll look at the information in this video and make a choice based on your playstyle, build, and team compositions, as well as thinking about what kind of units will be coming soon. I would personally aim for Jade's E1. In the long run, the more you use Jade, the more you might be grateful you have her at E1, as it lets you be more confident in using her outside of pure fiction. After E1, we saw a little bit of a damage increase at E4, and the fact that it will help Jade ignore defense could be kind of useful, but honestly, for you to have invested this much in Jade when there are bigger damage dealer units like Acheron and Firefly out there, you must have it bad for this heel stomping mummy. And if you have it bad for her, you might as well go all out for her E6. There's a massive damage increase for Jade at E6, and you could probably get away with using her for a long time to come. By then, you'd be broke anyway, or at least your daddy's credit card will be maxed out. So if you're crazy enough to get her at E6, enjoy the company of this now hugely powerful member of the IPC. After all, you've traded in all that you have for a moment of her time.